Hogwarts, A History. Fanfiction written by Christensen. Music by Kevin MacLeod. Chapter 1. Act 1, Scene 1. Exterior, field in Ireland, dusk, 990 AD. Open on a girl in a grassy fen, surrounded by trees somewhere in southern Ireland. She's about 18, skinny, with long, straight, blonde hair, dressed in dirty peasant clothes. She stares at a snake through the uneven, open weave of an upside-down handmade basket. The snake lays on the ground, coiled, ready to strike. A skinny boy steps up next to the cage. He has dark, curly hair and thick, dark eyebrows. He looks to be in his early 20s. The boy speaks to the girl.
You have to focus. Look deep into her eyes and command her to obey.
The girl looks from him and back to the snake, staring intensely at it. Their eyes are locked and she says something in parcel tongue. The snake rises and slides its head through a large hole on the roof of the basket and slithers into the girl's outstretched hand. She watches the snake as it coils around her wrist, and she looks up at her smiling brother. He looks off across the field at a shack more than 100 meters away, and behind that, a pillar of smoke rises from within the trees. The snake in the girl's hand hisses and the boy glances at it, causing it to transfigure back into a small dagger. The boy takes the newly transfigured dagger and sheathes it at his hip. The girl's attention is stolen by something flying above the trees in the distance. The figure flies closer, revealing it to be a man on a broomstick, waving his arms and hollering toward them something indistinguishable. Then the boy catches a glimpse of the mob making their way into the large field from the surrounding forest. The torches of the mob are seen pouring out of the thick trees, headed toward the shack. The boy grabs his sister by the hand and pulls her along as they run into the trees to hide. Once they are properly hidden, both stop to watch, panting frantically. Cut to the small shack in the middle of the field as the mob approaches. A woman has just emerged, hearing the ruckus as the mob members near the hut. Sounds of the man on the broom faintly trying to warn someone to stay in the hut.
Serena, stay inside.
Seeing the mob, she heeds her husband's instructions and goes back inside to barricade the door.
We have to go to her.
You know the procedure. He told us to wait here.
Cut to the broom rider shouting from his broomstick as he aims his wand down at a man approaching the shack.
Avada Kedavra!
A flash of green light emits from the broom rider's wand and collides with the man on his way to the hut. The man instantly falls to the ground dead. The mob cries out and begins slinging rocks at the wizard. He continues to fire spells at them and block their shots. The mob has penetrated the doorway and a woman can be heard struggling and then screaming as the men breach the shack, while a few archers and stone slingers fire at the broom rider. Distracted by her screams, the broom rider is struck in the neck by an arrow and falls off his broom to the ground below. The fall alone is high enough to kill him. Cut to the faces of the two watching helplessly from the trees. The girl gasps and covers her mouth with her hands. The boy watches in shock and disbelief. The men emerge from the hut and the woman has stopped screaming. They set fire to the shack and it goes up in flames in an instant. The two continue to watch from the trees as the men walk back the way they came, dragging the broom rider's body with them as they go.
Stay here.
Panicked, she grabs his arm.
You can't leave me.
I can't leave her.
The girl lets him go.
Stay.
He stands as her eyes well with tears. He makes his way through the trees out of sight of the mob. He reaches the back door and kicks it down, covering his face as he dives into the burning shack. Inside the shack, the boy tries to cough out the smoke that instantly fills his lungs. He twirls his wand in a circular motion around his head, conjuring a safety shield that keeps the smoke and flames repelled at a safe distance. He looks around and sees the woman now tied to the center support beam, her back toward him. A few ropes lashed tightly around her limbs and torso hold her to the center beam, leaving her feet dangling above the ground. He runs to her, and as he pulls at the ropes around her wrists tied behind the beam, her hands grip his fingers gently to stop him. He moves around to face her and sees a pitchfork protruding from her stomach. A rope has been pulled across her face, pinning her neck in a painful position. She struggles to keep her eyes open, and the angle her head is pinned in makes it difficult for her to look at her son.
The Hollow. You must take Selena to the Hollow. At his coven in the West Country. There is a place for the both of you. At the Pilgrim Staff Tavern there.
Her eyes glance downward at the small chain she wears around her neck, then back to him.
Take it. It belongs to you now.
He gently removes it from her neck and holds it tightly in his hand.
Wear it so she does not see me like this. I never wanted to keep secrets from her. From either of you. I only couldn't find the words.
Tears roll down both of their cheeks. She forces a faint smile as blood begins to seep from the corner of her mouth.
You know the spell.
He carefully kisses her cheek and then backs away, raising his wand at her. Cut to the girl's face as she watches anxiously from the trees. A flash of familiar green illuminates her face, and the realization immediately shows in her eyes. The boy emerges from the hut and walks slowly back to where his sister Selena waits in the trees. All the while, he avoids her questioning gaze. He softly takes her by the shoulders and turns her away from the fiery scene, keeping his eyes locked deep in the forest. She looks up at him, struggling to read him. Then she notices the locket he now wears around his neck. She looks at the serpentine S inlaid with green stones, knowing this to be the reason she cannot see into his thoughts. The two walk silently into the trees together, and the girl looks back over her shoulder at the shack she once called home. The shack continues to burn behind them, the blaze growing stronger and stronger until finally the shack crumbles, spewing more sparks and smoke into the twilight sky. End scene. Act 1, Scene 2. Exterior, forest, night. Cut to the brother and sister walking through the forest at night. They wander toward the unknown coven called the Hollow. As they walk in the darkness through the trees, they hear horses trampling behind them. Selena looks back toward the noise and fear. Her brother pulls her into a run. The horses' hooves are getting louder, and the glow from the torches is getting brighter. The brother quickly pulls her to the other side of a fallen tree, and they crouch down to hide behind it. The three horsemen come to a stop not far from them. The brother and sister silently wait behind the fallen tree. One of the horsemen can be seen searching with his torch. The boy readies his wand, looking to Selena as she does the same. He taps his wand in the air to signal the counting 3 beats.
1, 2, 3.
The two of them jump up, firing spells at the men.
Avada Kedavra!
The tree next to one of the riders is hit with the girl's curse, splintering in a fiery explosion. The horses rear and squeal. The rider drops his axe, another falls out of his saddle. The last is hit in the chest by the flash of green and falls to the ground with a thud. The only rider still astride his horse kicks the horse into a frantic run away from them. The boy points his wand at the nearest of the 2 horses, and it comes to a magical stop and trots back to them. Selena has matured 10 years in the last few hours as she confidently climbs on top of the fallen tree and aims her wand at the rider that got away. With a menacing glare and an eerie mastery of self, she whispers,
Avada Kedavra.
The jet of green light flares through the trees, colliding with the man, and he falls off the horse as it runs on without him. They both walk calmly toward the man cowering on the ground.
What shall we do with this one?
A pause as her brother bends to pick up the man's axe.
The same as it has done to us.
He looks down at the man and calmly says,
Raise it against that tree, won't you?
Selena readies herself, and with a swish and a flick of her wand, she lifts the man by his ankle. Kicking and screaming, she positions him with his back against the burning tree.
Incarcerus.
Ropes erupt from his wand and bind him tight against the tree trunk. The ropes continue to constrict and constrain him. The man's cries of agony continue. The boy does not ease up until one of the ropes finally snakes its way across the man's face, bending it in the same uncomfortable position that the witch hunters left his mother in. Selena casts a charm to quiet the man's cries of agony.
Silencio.
Instant silence other than the crackling of the burning tree and the sound of the man's feet struggling against the bark in his bonds. The boy chokes up on the axe and advances on him with an aggressive swing. Cut to a new shot, show Selena holding onto her brother's waist as he holds the reins of the horse he enchanted to return to them. They each take one final look, and then he turns the horse away from the fire. Selena's eyes can be seen just over his shoulder as they ride.
What are we supposed to do now?
A long pause as he glares forward into the forest.
Salazar?
We find the hollow.
He kicks the horse into a run and they gallop out of frame. The camera focuses on the burning tree with the shape of a charring corpse pinned there by an axe. The camera lifts into the sky rapidly to reveal the title. Hogwarts: A History. The theme plays as the camera drifts down over a quaint village. Act 1, Scene 3. Interior, a cottage home, night. The town square is illuminated with a red bonfire, and the camera lowers on a cottage on the outskirts of the square. The camera enters through a window on the forest side of the cottage. A woman stands looking out the window into the dark woods, pondering something that makes her look mournfully into the trees. She appears to be in her early 30s. She is a plump and pretty woman with strawberry blonde hair that is braided and pulled back into a messy bun. She wears nice peasant clothes in an autumn color palette and an apron covered in flour. She shakes her head back to the present and returns to kneading the dough on the counter in front of her. She works silently for a moment, then stops when she hears a commotion outside. Loud voices and the squeal of a horse. A large, burly, and hairy-looking man comes in through the front door, looking tired. She crosses to him, eager to hear the news as she wipes her hands on her apron. He closes the door behind him.
The horses came back without their riders. One of them didn't return at all. They want a squadron to go out and finish the hunt.
You should go with them.
He pulls on a jacket and speaks close to her face in a hushed tone.
I gave Isaac a broomstick so he could get away and warn his family. But I couldn't do any more or I would have been discovered.
She pulls the lapels of his coat to kiss him deeply.
We did what we could. Our attention now should be reserved for his posterity.
They separate. He gives her a smile and turns to the door.
Diorwyn, lead them north.
He gives her a nod and opens the door. The noise is amplified as he does, and the woman watches for a moment there. The horses that ran off without their riders are rearing and bucking as the men try to grab their reins and calm them. A man runs past the door with a torch, and she closes the door, shutting out the noise. She pauses for only a moment before she hurries up the narrow stairway of the cottage and into a dark bedroom, where a golden cup sits on a chest of drawers. The cup of Helga Hufflepuff. The cup's contents cast ripples of light onto the ceiling of the cottage bedroom. She takes the cup and tips it upside down, pouring out what looks like liquefied gold. The magical substance hangs in the air and floats around her torso. The weightless liquid contains reflections of scenes that glimmer and rotate around her like a carousel. The first is of the man on the broomstick, referred to earlier as Isaac, being struck by the arrow and falling in animated stills to his death. His children can both be seen watching in the background. Another image drifts into view of Salazar being told by his mother, Serena, to find the hollow. Only her figure is distorted by a murky, cloudy substance. Then the image of Selena and the cloudy substance obscures Salazar from view as they walk away from the burning shack. Next, a still of their run-in with the horsemen, Salazar's figure still blocked by the murky substance. Finally, a frozen, blurry glimpse of Selena resting on the murky figure's back as they ride the horse away from the burning tree. After studying the images in the liquefied gold, she makes a scooping motion through the air a few times with the cup, and the golden liquid is sucked back inside. She stuffs the cup into a large satchel she throws over her shoulder and retrieves a wand from the folds of her robes. She pulls a shawl over herself and disapparates in one fluid motion. End scene. Act 1, Scene 4. Exterior Forest Road. Night. The woman apparates into a dark forest near a road. A moment later, she is startled by the quick stamping of hooves as a horse and its two riders fly past her. Startled, she looks after the horse. As it runs away from her, she disapparates again. Cut to Salazar as his attention is stolen by the glow of a campfire just off the side of the road up ahead. Salazar readies his wand.
Wand at the ready, Selena.
Selena lifts her head from his shoulder, where she was shielded from the cold wind. She sees the light and holds her wand firmly. The woman stands at the side of the road, her campfire a few meters behind her. She gently waves them down with a faint glow at the tip of her wand. Salazar kicks the horse and they sprint past her.
Go back, Sal. She's a witch.
Could you get anything from her?
No, I think we ran by too quickly.
Then we're not stopping.
Selena looks back longingly as the woman lowers her wand, almost discouraged to see them ride away. They don't get far before the blue glow of a Patronus light catches up to them. Now keeping speed with the horse, the Patronus is in the form of a badger, hobbling through the air, comically rolling onto its back to glide easily alongside them, giving them a cocky nod.
Look! It's a familiar! Like the one Mother could conjure! Turn back! Turn back this instant!
Salazar slows the horse and they trot back, following the Patronus to its conjurer. As they approach her, she stands calmly on the side of the road with the Patronus over her shoulder. It dissolves into the air and she speaks.
Thought you might be in need of a rest.
Salazar looks suspicious while Selena looks enchanted by her. Other than her parents and her brother, she has never met anyone from the wizarding community. The woman seems startled and instinctively grabs a small topaz-colored amulet around her neck, then looks at Selena, who had been eyeing her. Selena breaks the connection and the woman releases the amulet with a small smirk. Salazar asks cautiously,
Why would you make such an effort to help us?
I was given a premonition of your riding away from the witch hunters. You did quite well, but I feared you haven't had the time to gather provisions to continue at this pace for long.
Your concern is appreciated, but we must decline and press on.
He nudges the horse to begin trotting away.
And your destination?
I must say, it is very brazen of you to think you can question us on matters that are ours and ours alone.
I agree with you there. I only wondered if you needed directions to get to the Hollow.
Stunned by the mention of the very coven they're seeking, Salazar stops the horse and shifts in the saddle to look back at her. Cut to the three of them sitting around the campfire. The two warm themselves while seated on a log as the woman stokes the fire. The horse is tied to a tree and can be seen feeding on the grass in the background. The woman levitates 2 meat pies from under the fiery coals and passes them through the air to the two of them on freshly conjured wooden plates. Then she conjures 2 wooden utensils and passes them through the air as well. Both Selena and Salazar are in awe at her skill.
Well, get on with it then.
They dig into the humble feast.
The name's Helga, by the way.
Nearly choking, trying not to burn her throat with the steaming bite of her pie, Selena answers politely.
I'm Selena, and this is my brother Salazar. Yes, I've known you two for a while now.
And how is it that you know us? Because I think I would remember meeting you.
Oh, that'll take too long to explain. What you really want to know about is the Hollow. Am I right?
Helga's hand goes back to the amulet, and she looks at Selena sideways. Selena goes back to eating her pie, as if nothing happened. Salazar looks suspiciously at each of them.
That amulet you have, where did you get it?
This? Actually, I purchased it from your father.
The siblings look at one another, then back at Helga.
You knew our father? Yes. Not well, but he knocked on my door to sell me his trinkets. I recognised your father as a conman from the moment I saw him.
They both hang their heads ashamed.
However, I didn't see him as a swindler.
Selena looks up at her solemnly.
It's our father, doing everything he could to provide for his family.
Selena smiles at her with tears in her eyes.
I was taught that when you see someone in need, you must lend a hand. I was told this amulet would fend off dark forces, so I purchased it. I offered him a drink to give him the strength to continue on, even if his wares are lackluster at best. It's hard work caring for a family.
Your kind words on our father's behalf are much appreciated. We are ashamed that his crafts didn't always work the way they were intended to.
Not at all. He told me it would keep unwanted cunning folk from entering my mind, and he wasn't far off. I see now that it warns against the attempts of illegitimate, like your sister.
What did you call her?
Helga turns to Selena.
Did no one tell you that you were illegitimate? A what?
Seeing their confusion, she explains.
A legilimens is a witch or wizard who can read another's thoughts. And you can see into the minds of others, can you not? Yes, I can. Can you as well? I'm more gifted as an octomans, actually. That's a term for those that can keep a legilimens from penetrating their mind.
Our mother had a locket that could do that, in order to keep Selena out of her thoughts. He fashioned the amulets he sold after her original.
Ah, the sequel is never as good as the original.
Helga sips from her cup and holds her amulet in her hand.
This one seems to simply radiate heat when someone is attempting to enter your thoughts, as a kind of warning. I suppose it came in handy tonight. Please forgive me. I'm so used to using my gift, I forget to have any restraint. Not to worry, love. It is your gift that will help you find refuge at the Hollow. It has become a highly sought-after coven, notorious for vagabonds from all over. Many travel every year looking to find sanctuary, only to discover that admittance is not free.
We have no money or valuables we are willing to trade, so kindly be forthcoming with the coven's price before we waste the trek.
They're not after your money. They admit only the bold and the brave, not to mention those that show impressive magical ability before they welcome you as one of their own. Also,
She continues resentfully.
loyalty to your magical status and community won't hurt.
She gives a huff and rolls her eyes at the thought.
We are purebloods. There's no question about that. What is it they look for as far as impressive magical ability?
As I said, Selena's natural ability as a legilimens will be enough for her to gain admittance. Most witches and wizards take years of training to master that skill.
Helga reaches over and jostles Selena's knee in a congratulatory fashion, then turns to Salazar.
And what can you do?
Excuse me?
What is it you can do to prove your worth to the Hollow?
An awkward moment passes as Salazar looks down at the fire, considering his own worth. Selena starts to see the discouragement that he feels and sits up.
Salazar can speak to snakes.
A look of surprise comes over Helga's face as she looks from Selena to Salazar.
Ah, yes. I've heard of tongues to speak to creatures. Harpa the Fowl of ancient Greece was one of the most famous parcel mouths. But it's rare to meet someone alive today with that ability.
Salazar continues to stare into the flames.
I've always been able to speak it. I didn't realise how unique it was.
For that I am truly sorry. It is a crime to rob a young person such as yourself from the little humility they have left.
Taking offense at her comment, Salazar jumps to his feet, effectively throwing his pie into the fire.
We didn't ask for your charity, so don't...
But you have taken it. And now you've thrown it into the fire.
Salazar looks like he's about to explode when Selena gently grabs his hand and looks up at him imploringly.
Please, Sal. I'm terrified. She's the only kindness we've seen.
Glaring at Helga, Salazar lowers back down onto the log they share.
Well, you have spoiled the end of a perfectly good meat pie. And I'm afraid that that's the last I have of that. But I can offer you a drink to cool you off.
Helga jovially winks at Salazar, who continues to glare at her, as she passes her cup embellished with an emblem of a badger to Selena. Selena examines it. Seeing that it is empty, she eyes Helga, who simply tilts her head as a gesture to pass it on. Selena nudges him with the cup to break his death stare. He looks at the cup for a moment, noticing that it's completely empty. He eyes her as if she's playing a trick on him, one to kick him while he's down.
Well, go on. It won't hurt you.
He takes the cup, raises it to his lips, and visibly drinks something from the empty vessel. His expression cannot be denied. He is obviously grateful for the drink.
I thought you might like that. A special serving of butterbeer from an old family recipe. Butterbeer? Yes, love. Go on, have a sip. She won't run out. That's a special cup with no bottom. It's connected directly to my own personal stores.
Helga smiles discreetly as Selena takes the cup from Salazar and drinks eagerly, emerging with a foam mustache and a wide smile.
It's the most delicious thing I've ever tasted. There'll be more of that found at the Pilgrim Staff Tavern.
That's exactly where we're about to go for shelter. So you do know the place?
Now, can you see fit to trust me at last?
Salazar looks ashamed because of his behavior.
My apologies, Mess. I appreciate your help very much. It's just been a trying day.
That's saying the least. After all that you've been through, you have every right to be a bit apprehensive.
They give each other reassuring looks of gratitude and forgiveness. Selena smiles and looks down to admire the cup in her hands.
The emblem on your cup, it is of your familiar, is it not? My familiar... Oh, you mean my Patronus. Yes, as a matter of fact it is. It's clear you have not been properly educated in the magical arts, have you?
Silence as the two shift awkwardly, looking at each other from the corner of their eyes. Realizing that she may have offended them, she tries to remedy her error.
It is also clear to me that you are both gifted beyond your years. Even without proper training, you will learn in no time from those in the Hollow.
I hope you're right. I suppose we could use all the help we can get. So if you wouldn't mind telling us how to get there, we best be on our way.
I assume you never learned to apparate. I would take you myself if I wasn't worried about getting one of us splinched. It's just as well. No one can apparate within a certain proximity to the coven.
With that, she gets to her feet.
However, it's much too late to begin a trek like that without a bit of rest. You can leave first thing in the morning.
There's not time to waste with the witch hunters on our trail. We really must be going.
I have it on good authority that the witch hunters have been rerouted to the north. You will both rest for the night, and in the morning I will show you the way to the coven. That is neither a request nor a command, but I expect you'll follow it.
Helga turns and swiftly transfigures 2 leaves on the ground into simple tents for them to use. Salazar exchanges a look with Selena. Helga eyes them from over her shoulder as she summons some bedding and pillows inside the impromptu shelter she's created. Selena speaks softly to Salazar.
That horse could use a rest, Sal. We might as well spend the night.
Salazar nods and they both stand to help with the tents if they can. Helga douses the flames by absorbing them into her wand and the scene fades to black. End scene. Act 1, Scene 5. Exterior, campsite in the forest, morning. Open on a dewy morning, the sun still low in the sky but piercing through the trees beautifully. Salazar and Selena share a tent. Salazar wakes peacefully to the sounds of the forest. For a moment it seems he's forgotten where he is. Then remembering, he sits up with a start. Selena is jostled awake by him and he looks around for signs of danger. He notices that Helga's tent is packed up and gone.
She's left us.
Selena sits up with a start to see for herself. Salazar begins rolling up the blankets to take with them, huffing and puffing over the desertion.
And without giving the direction she promised.
Just as he says the word directions, Helga's Patronus emerges silently from the ashes of the fire pit behind him. The figure of a badger does a backflip through the air, then hovers, looking at Selena as her eyes light up. Selena taps Salazar's shoulder and he turns around impatiently. He's struck with surprise to see the badger floating back to the road. Then it turns and looks at them, as if to show that it is ready to lead the way. Selena looks around the forest for a sign of Helga, but there is none. Instead, she discovers 2 new traveling cloaks hanging on the tree near where the horse has been tied up. One, a deep emerald green, the other, a classy silver gray. She smiles at Salazar and helps to gather the tent up. The look of shock and surprise hasn't left Salazar's face as he stares blankly at the badger. Cut to a montage as they trot along the wooded country road and follow it onto a hillside with the Patronus leading the way for them. Selena wearing the green cloak, Salazar the grey. They take a ferry across the Irish Sea and climb over the Cambrian Mountains in Wales. Show them at camp practicing their magic and making the most of their time with the Patronus Guardian lingering nearby. Different angles of them riding by foggy moors and through rocky caverns. Then finally emerging to the top of a mountain overlooking a valley with a quaint village down below. Act 1, Scene 6. Exterior Valley of the Hollow, night. The badger leads them down the mountainside, and it begins to rain. As they reach the basin, their horse trots slowly through the long valley at night, the rain still pouring down hard. The montage ends with the horse sloshing through the mud in the valley. Without warning, their Patronus guide vanishes as the horse clomps into town. They look around for their guide, which has clearly disappeared. But they realize this must be the place. The small cottages and streets look empty. As they make their way further down the street, a passerby glares at them. A few people poke their heads out their windows to stare at the 2 strangers. Salazar notices a sign hanging above a porch with a lantern giving light to read, "The Pilgrim Staff Tavern." A 2-story thatched roof tavern stands casting lights from its windows onto the muddy puddles below. Salazar dismounts with a splash and leads the horse to the rail to tie him up with the other horses. He raises his arms to help Selena down, and the 2 slosh up the porch steps to the front door. With a look at Selena, he pushes the door open and they enter. Immediately, they are bathed in warm light and loud tavern ambiance. The glow from the fireplace warms the whole tavern. A few heads turn to see who entered, but most people continue eating and drinking at the long tables in the center of the room. A group of witches and wizards talk loudly at their table. The roof leaks in a few areas, and a couple of witches clink drinks together. The noise causes a pair of doxies to fly out of the curtains and away from the clinking metal. Most wizards are dressed elegantly, and a house elf is seen playing an array of instruments all at the same time next to the hearth. A violent bolt of lightning sends a man off his chair writhing on the floor. The attacker downs a stein of something while his friends roar in laughter, and purple smoke fizzles from his target's twitching body. The group of laughing friends help the man back into his seat, prepared to carry on their conversation as if nothing happened. Selena looks at Salazar terrified. Salazar nudges her toward a corner table in the back of the house. As they make their way back, a small house elf balancing a large tray of dishes on her head excuses herself past them. They both give a start but carry on to the back of the tavern. They arrive at the quiet table, and Salazar notices a large, gruff-looking man eyeing them from behind the bar. Salazar looks off in another direction, hoping he will too. The man signals another house elf working behind the counter. The house elf makes her way over to them, without needing to duck under the bar to reach them on the other side of the room, approaching them ready to take their order in a helpful but tired drawl.
"What'll it be?"
Selena looks to Salazar.
Nothing for us. We haven't any money. We only came in to get out of the storm.
"Not to worry. Paddock will get the missy and the sir something warm. On the house."
With a wink, the elf scurries behind the bar again, and can be seen whispering to the man. He spits in a mug and makes his way from behind the bar over to them. As he approaches, Selena and Salazar both prepare to be thrown out.
We didn't mean to call attention to your staff, sir. We just got into town and needed to rest a bit before finding a place for the night. Who are you from? Salazar, confused by the phrasing. Who are we from? Well, I am the eldest and only son of Isaac of Hungary and Serena of Dorset, and this is their only daughter. Both of us pureblood, sir. I can assure you. Looking from him to Selena, the man places his hands domineeringly on their table and leans in over them. I'm warning you, lad. That's an awful lie if you have any proof. Salazar responds, slightly panicked. We are purebloods, but I'm afraid I don't know how to prove it to you. We can offer you our horse in exchange for room and board for the night, and the hot meal your elf said it would bring.
Her.
Begging your pardon,
The elf is a she, not an it. And she is no one's property. You understand?
Still panicking.
Of course, besides, I don't give a damn about your ruddy blood status. I'm talking about proof that Serena was really your mother.
Selena reads the man's mind.
You knew our mother?
I knew her. Better than she knew herself. But I know if she sent you here, she would have ensured you had some way to prove your affiliation.
Salazar reveals the locket still hanging around his neck.
This was worn by our mother for most of her life until she gave it to me, as her dying wish.
At this, the man's eyes widen. He takes a long breath and hangs his head to the floor.
She was a majestic soul, she was.
He lifts his head again to meet their eyes, with tears welling up in his own.
The poor thing sending you here on your own. I know she must have been right terrified for you.
How did you know our mother?
Her father and I ran this very tavern. Known him since I first arrived here. Good blood, despite this coven's effects on them.
They lived here.
Of course they did.
He boisterously gestures to the rafters.
He built this tavern with his bare hands, mind you.
Noting the excitement on their faces, he explains.
Best not be getting your hopes up about him. He's dead too. Selena's eyes fall. But don't you worry, you'll be alright here with us. It won't be easy, and it won't be free, no doubt. You'll need to pull your own round here, but any family of Serena is welcome.
With a polite bow of his head, Salazar says,
We thank you, sir. Don't mention it. I think of it as recompense for the way I was taken in by your grandfather all those years ago. Now will you stop calling me sir? Name's Mistress Deirdre to you both.
Salazar's eyes grow wide as the shock and embarrassment come over him. He stammers to apologize while Selena suppresses a laugh.
Don't mind my brother. He's been conditioned to notice little else other than blood status.
Paddock returns with 2 large steins of butterbeer and bowls of stew. Deirdre to Paddock.
These are Serena's 2 children. They'll be staying with us, as they've got nowhere else to go.
She sets the table with wide eyes beaming up at them.
What fine tidings. Terrible about Mistress Serena, though. Just terrible.
Paddock still can't believe Serena's gone so soon.
Yes, everyone was fond of her.
Why is it you don't seem surprised to hear she's passed?
You can be sure Serena left her mark on this coven. We knew something terrible had happened a few weeks ago.
Slightly distracted by a ruckus of new customers at another table, she continues.
Well, never you mind. You eat up and enjoy.
Paddock here will gladly show you to your room when you're finished.
Then she hollers to the newcomers making all the noise.
Oi! No be so loud. Get that murtlap out of me pub.
A murtlap squeals as she stomps off to deal with the problem.
Paddock finishes setting the table with their silverware.
Serena's kin need anything at all. Just give us a snap.
And with a snap of her fingers, she disapparates. They catch the familiar scent of butterbeer in the steins in front of them and notice that they are actually full. Their exhaustion and starvation prevent them from questioning why the butterbeer is not invisible this time, and they eat and drink gratefully. The tavern isn't very large, but their little corner table is secluded enough, as Selena has lowered hers, happily enjoying the safety and the ambiance of the tavern.
Rain falls heavily against the window behind them. The door is thrust open, and a group of laughing witches and wizards enters the pub noisily, intentionally making a scene. Loud and obnoxious, they remove their wet cloaks to reveal that they're all dressed in noble robes of a red, orange, and yellow color scheme. The leader of their gang is a tall and striking young man about 18. He has short brown hair and thick stubble covers his strong jawline. Even from over his thick robes, it's clear he's well built. He stands with a strapping pair of rounded shoulders as he raises a thick leather-bound book like a trophy over his head and jeers.
Did you see his face when we took the grimoire and still sent him packing?
The gang all chortle.
He knew we would have it from him either way it went.
Another boy by the name of Hereward does a crude impression of the man they're making fun of. He has curly blonde hair on top of a long horse-like face with large teeth to complete the likeness.
Please, I already paid you the fee for trespassing and shan't do it again.
The group laugh harder as he takes the book from the leader.
Funny how this is the one he was so unwilling to part with. Must be the most notorious of his collection. Serves him right, the old warlock, trying to pawn his second-rate grimoires off on this coven, who made damn certain that he won't be making that mistake twice.
A girl by the name of Nearest pipes up. She has thin, black hair that hangs just above her shoulder length and frames her short, cramped face with a permanent look of having something sour on her gums.
If he wants to keep any memory of how to find his way home, that is.
They cheer and chortle and take places at the bar just opposite the entrance. A wizard seated nearby takes his drink and moves to another table, annoyed by their shouts. The girl leans over the bar to bark orders at Paddock.
6 fire whiskies, Paddock, and my father's bill will do nicely.
Paddock is extremely quick with their order as she magically pours their drinks into large metal steins and levitates them up onto the counter. The lead boy takes his drink and spins around on his stool to look out over the pub. She looks down at her bowl quickly as he takes a swig of the fire whiskey without dropping his gaze, then smiles haughtily at Selena. He swaggers off the stool and stalks along the bar toward their table. Nearest watches curiously as he leaves. As he crosses the room, he takes no consideration for the house elf bussing a nearby table, knocking her over without even a glance as her freshly bussed table items clang to the stone floor. Selena notices him approaching and worriedly tries to avoid eye contact, hoping he will leave them alone. Instead, he walks directly up to the table, addressing Salazar, still hidden behind the shadow of the hood.
Even with such fair figures like yours, you two should know this is a domain with the strictest policy of privacy.
No response.
Why doesn't the lass lower that pretty hood of hers? Perchance her beauty will persuade me to allow her to stay.
He looks back to Selena, who looks frightened.
Don't be shy. I'm sure you'll do just fine.
He reaches across the table to touch her arm.
If you plan on staying, I'll need to see your talents for myself.
As he reaches slowly closer, Salazar violently draws his wand and drops his hood, pointing directly at the aggressor's nose.
Perchance this will persuade you to leave us to our drinks, if you know what's good for you.
The boy steps back, his arms raised lazily with a crooked smile as his gang hurry to his side. The bar is quiet as they all watch the back table. His smile fades as his audience grows, and his smile is replaced with feigned remorse.
I see I have misspoken.
He takes another step back, then quickly draws his own wand.
Not a fair face at all, but rather a cross-dressing peasant and his wench.
His gang laugh. Selena looks terrified. They glare at each other for a moment, and then Salazar makes a small movement, but the boy is quicker. He sends a long, bright orange cord out of the tip of his wand with a small flick. The cord has frayed finger-like strands on the end that grip Salazar around his neck and lift him into the air, slamming his head against a beam along the ceiling of the tavern. Selena screams as Salazar's wand erupts with red sparks that fracture the table, spilling the contents. The pub watches and begins to laugh as Salazar kicks in the air and claws with his arms at the cord, strangling him. His wand falls from his fingers as he begins to lose consciousness.
Oi! Godric!
Deirdre stands on top of the bar, her wand pointed at Godric from across the tavern, her face twisted angrily. Godric cocks his head to look at his new challenger.
You best let him down. I've told you before. I won't have the likes of you showing off in me tavern, or you'll find a new place to drink away your inheritance.
Godric looks at her, the same prideful smile on his face as before. He looks around at his followers, and with a shrug, he drops the cord and Salazar falls with a crash onto the broken remains of the table. Food and debris spilling on him as he lays face down on the stone floor. Selena jumps to his side as Salazar gasps for air. The gang meander out of the pub as if they did exactly what they came there to do. Deirdre addresses the silent crowd.
Back to your drinks.
With that, she fires a loud pop from her wand and the house elf in the corner starts up his one-man band again. The tavern returns to their drinks as they were told. Deirdre glares angrily at the corner table. She drops her head with a sigh as she watches Selena helping Salazar to his feet. Act 1, Scene 7. Interior, second floor of the Pilgrim Staff Tavern. Night. Open on a vacant bedroom in the dark. The door opens and Deirdre enters, flippantly flicking her wand to light the candle on the bedside table. Now illuminated, the room is drab and small with only a bed and a chest of drawers.
I knew when I opened me door to a pair of Serena's kin we'd see some trouble, but I must say I'm surprised to be having so much of it this early on.
After a brief silence, Selena speaks as she helps Salazar to the bed.
We feel terrible, mistress. My brother has never done anything like that before.
I know that young thug Godric the Great had more to do with it than you did. He thinks because his father founded the coven he can get away with anything. One day his antics are going to catch up to him, mark me words.
Salazar lays back on the bed, covering his eyes with the back of his forearm. Deirdre watches as Selena worries over him.
Well, you'll be staying in here. The work will start at sunup, so you better get your rest. I'll send Paddock up here with a fresh pair of meals for you.
We can't express what this means to us, mistress. You have our gratitude.
Deirdre glances around the room with a sigh, then tenderly bids them good night.
Sleep well, little jinxes.
She exits and closes the door behind her. The two are left in the room with the thunderstorm and muffled voices from downstairs making the only sounds. Selena sits on the side of the bed. Hesitantly, Selena asks,
Are you feeling alright?
No, Selena, I'm not.
Well, that is the first time you've ever been in a wizarding duel before, and in your defence...
I didn't ask you to defend me. You couldn't step up in the moment, so why try now?
They sit in silence as the rain continues to fall outside. Then there's a knock at the door.
Come in!
Paddock opens the door and closes it behind her magically, tentatively entering the room. She carries a tray with 2 bowls steaming with fresh stew and a large crust of bread.
Pardon, old Paddock. Mistress sent Paddock to bring up the meals straight away, she did.
Thank you, Paddock. We're sorry for the trouble we caused.
Not to worry, miss. Godric is always stirring up mischief. Paddock is happy to be having Serena's kin here.
What a shame to be hearing about poor Serena's passing.
If you're not too busy, I do wonder if you might tell us how you and Mistress Deirdre came to know our mother.
Indeed, miss. Eat, and Paddock will tell all about it.
Paddock hops up onto the side of the bed.
Serena was always kind to new faces like Paddock and the mistress she was.
Reminiscing with a smile as Selena grabs the bread, takes a bite and tosses the rest on Salazar's chest. She scoops up the bowl for herself to cozy up and hear about her mother.
Paddock has known Serena almost as long as Paddock has been acquainted with Mistress Deirdre. It was just Paddock and her 2 small children, after we had been displaced from the elvish parish Paddock called home,
remembering remorsefully.
Back when things were peaceful, after magic became the enemy. That peace was chased out of Paddock's life.
Paddock looks up at Selena with big watery eyes.
Witch hunters raided that place and burned it to the ground. Paddock's husband was among those that defended it with their lives, he was.
Oh, Paddock, that's awful.
Yes. Everything changed when the magic that used to serve the Muggles became their enemy.
You mean Muggles used to use magic?
Why, yes, of course. Paddock is surprised you were never told of the glory days, when Muggles and magic folk alike would buy and sell together. The Muggles came to call the witches and wizards cunning folk, for all the innovation that was produced by the sharing of their practices.
What changed?
Paddock wishes she knew. Deirdre says those who reigned over the land felt they were not needed. The people were given the tools to handle their own tribulations rather than rely on their government.
But isn't that a good thing?
Apparently not for those in power.
Due to the growing threat of violence, it became unsafe for elves to live on their own, as all the elvish communities were being hunted down and destroyed. This forced the elves to beg for work that would offer them room and board. It was the protection found inside wizarding houses that caused our kind to trade a living wage for simply being able to live. But the stars aligned and sent Paddock a friend in Deirdre. When Paddock was begging for work on the side of the road, Mistress Deirdre informed Paddock that she was in search of a coven. Covens were still a novel idea, as they had been popping up all over England only since magic was banned. Deirdre insisted that Paddock and Paddock's 2 children went along with her. Bless her heart.
So, those are your children downstairs then?
Yes, indeed, missy. Paddock has a daughter by the name of Grey. She's the one waiting tables. And then there's Paddock's only son, Malcolm, who was given the entertainment downstairs.
Well, we look forward to meeting them both. We'll be helping you with the work for the next few days.
Is that what you think?
Selena and Paddock look up at Salazar, surprised by his sudden outburst.
You think we're here for a nice visit, do you?
I didn't think...
That's right. You didn't think. You didn't think that we'd be stuck here for who knows how long. Wake up, Selena. We're on our own now, with no one and nowhere else to go.
You're right. Our life is in our own hands, which means we get to choose what we make of it. If you want to choose to wallow in self-pity, go right ahead. But we're not alone. We still have each other.
She crosses to the other side of the bed and climbs under the dusty feather blanket to go to sleep, her back to Salazar. He starts to diffuse and humble himself. Paddock stands awkwardly waiting in silence.
Perhaps Paddock will find another time to tell you all about Serena. Best get back to the kitchen. Good night then.
With another snap of her fingers, Paddock disapparates from the room. Salazar sits silently for a moment with the rain still leaking in. He opens the bed covers and climbs in as well, then blows out the candle, leaving the scene in total darkness. Only the rain and Selena's soft sobs are heard in the darkness as the scene fades to black. End of chapter 1.